Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast. I am Race for the Prize. Let's talk about a Las Vegas Cup Series. It's Sunday morning. Let's make some picks before we go there. Remember, racefortheprize.com is where you can get access to this beautiful fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet and all the lap data and all the projections, optimizers, mass entry tool, everything. Racefortheprize.com, simply Venmo, PayPal, Cash App some money to me. We're going to run through the grid. Let's just start by running through the grid, see how that goes, talk about every single driver, and then maybe we'll talk some lineup construction. Please like the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Tons of content. Share. Joe Logano 10,000. Now, first thing that you need to make aware of, well, 2 points. One, do not go and get hitched to the practice data. Do not run off and get married. Don't elope in the Great Smokies. You have done work all week. You have researched all week. You've looked at trends. Do not abandon your process now because you have a new data point. I always say that. I will continue to say that. Yes, practice data is helpful, and we're going to use it, and it's good, and it's beautiful, and it looks great on the screen. But balance it out, folks. Balance it out. I always tell you that. So thanks. Number 2, the green clean track in Group A was faster. The second session is going to be much slower, mainly in terms of your single lap runs, things that equalize a little bit, but also the teams that ran in Group B had a better read on a gripped up track and were better able to qualify. Also, more than likely, were better able to process data and get a feel for how the car will run in the race. Disadvantage for A, also A's, at least their single lap runs are going to be slightly inflated and even some of their long runs. So make sure that you are aware of that. Joey Logano wins the pole. Not too surprised. Penske, known for short run speed. Penske appears to be a little bit trimmed out as well. Not completely. Again, Logano's single lap time definitely being suppressed by the fact that he was in Group B. Long run speed, not terrible, but I'm leaning towards this team being short run and trimmed out. And one of the reasons why I'm leaning that direction is you can see here with Austin Cindric also qualifying up front. Not a great driver. Hasn't really put together great results. Where did this speed come from? They didn't really show a lot of it in practice. I know it's a Group B car, but 25 to 3, I think they're a little bit trimmed out. And once they get into dirty air, there's going to be issues. Now, that doesn't mean completely abandon Logano. I'm not playing Cindric at all, but Logano can make it work if there are short runs. And he does have the number 1 pit stall. He could possibly lead a very little bit at the beginning, score enough fantasy points before Larson eats him up, and then just hang in there throughout the race. He has the number 1 pit stall. He has a very fast pit crew team. And the only thing that's going to go against that is that we're going to see 2 tire switches. And so Logano's number 1 pit stall advantage may not be the best at Las Vegas. And also, the Las Vegas number 1 pit stall has been a little bit notorious over the years. I don't know if they have made modifications to that or where we still stand on that story. But either way, with the 2 tire strategies that are going to happen, his pit selection may not be that significant. His pit speed may not be that significant. So that dials it back a little bit. Not completely off the board. Now, who is on the board and looks like 100% play is Kyle Larson. The only thing that you could hold against him, but he was only 9th on a short run and a 1-lap speed. Well, the reason why was because he was in Group B. Everything else, he just went up there and absolutely crushed. He's crushed this racetrack all the time. Last season, he was absolutely a menace to society. And one of the key things to look at here with Larson is just to look at his laps. And as we run them really deep, I mean, he is still running at 177 on lap 24 of his run. A 177 on lap 24. The only one that's comparable is William Byron, who we are also going to like. We've got other good drivers that are running 177, towards the 10s, the 15s. The others fall off, but he has significantly less fall off than everyone else. And that might have been one of his slower laps that I pointed out right there. So very fast for Kyle Larson. Yeah, he did fire out of the gates, but he wasn't going to be able to since he was in Group B. And you can see another similar car here in Chase Elliott, but Elliott gets a little bit more fall off and then brings it in. But also fast Hendrick, also another fast Hendrick and Willie Byron, also another fast Hendrick, Alex Bowman, and then Ryan Blaney. And then from there, it's hard to find drivers that really match him in lap averages. But Wallace and Tyler Reddick, look, Reddick's already down to 176 on lap 17. Bubba's hanging in there. These would probably be your next two that you're slotting in terms of long run speed, possible fast laps, lap leaders. I'm very worried about the JGR speed. You can see right here, it wasn't there. You don't want to overreact to practice, but you at least want to get a pretty good idea with the setup decisions that you make. And when we see Truex and Hamlin pretty far off, Christopher Bell not really where we were expecting them to be. Maybe they weren't ready for the wind. Maybe they weren't ready for the bumps. Who knows what it was, but either way, they're clearly a step behind Hendrick, and you really don't want to play that game. Yeah, they can make it work with two-tire stops, but if I'm encouraged about anyone, it's not JGR. It's definitely going to be the Hendrick team. It's definitely 2311. And then the other team that I would slide in there was Kyle Busch, although their long run speed isn't particularly great either. But I think there is a little bit something here with RCR. Let's just go back to the grid. We can come back to the laps here in a second. Again, it's Jamin Larson. No Cindric. It's Jamin Byron. And it's almost our exact same numbers in Group B. They can't lay down the fast lap, but then when laps start to equalize and even out when running on the long run, they absolutely toast the chart. So just like last spring, it was Byron and Larson. I imagine we're going to have another duel between Byron and Larson. I like playing a lot of them. Bubba's numbers are going to be a little bit inflated because he's in Group A. But ultimately, and so is his teammate Tyler Reddick. We go down here to Reddick. And I think he definitely emphasizes that point of the track change from Group A to Group B. And so when it came time for qualifying after Group B, he was not able to replicate those speeds. That doesn't mean his car is Fugazi. It's not a facade. It just means he didn't make the right adjustments. He probably, more than likely, will be fine during the race. Either way, there was speed in the 2311 Toyotas, whereas there wasn't speed in the Toyotas from the JGR camp. Wallace finished fourth here, has won at Kansas. Can he lead laps and run fast laps? He can. Will he do that over Byron and Larson? I think he will aggressively try, especially with the Rajah Caruth narrative. And if I'm staying corrected, Bubba Wallace was pretty aggressive at Las Vegas with Kyle Larson once upon a time in the infield. Ultimately, I think Larson just pulls away and never gives Wallace that opportunity. Briscoe is something that I want to explore. I am not sure what is going on with SHR. The first thing with Stewart-Haas Racing is that DraftKings gave us a significant discount on every single one of those cars. Now, one of the things that I suspect is happening is young guns, new team, they're all running different setups. They're throwing everything at the wall, trying to figure things out. Not running as much laps as I'd like to have seen. Now, Noah Gregson's practice was interrupted because we had that early wreck. He came out looking pretty good, but he did have a moment. He wasn't too worried about the car. He wasn't too excited. There was speed. It was kind of in between. But when you don't run very many laps, A, that helps. That prevents data collection. B, tells me that you probably, whether you're saying it on the radio or not, and as a young driver trying to make it with the new team, maybe sometimes you don't share all the information. If you're confused or lost, maybe you don't want to say that to them. And you don't admit that you're possibly struggling. But when you don't run very many laps, that is a concern for Gregson on SHR. And then we'll look at Chase Briscoe, look at some of his laps. Pretty good in qualifying. But again, just not a lot of laps. You can see on lap 9, he is already running what Kyle Larson was running at the end of Larson's run. That's not great. He did have good short run speed. He did qualify well. But this is a wide track. There are multiple grooves. You can run up on the wall. You can run the middle. You can even dare to run the bottom at times. And it's easy to get shuffled back. And then with all the different people coming and going, I think you put this car in dirty air on a long run, it's falling backwards, and I'm not interested in it. Mark Truex Jr. didn't really show us a lot of speed in practice. Didn't really show too much speed last year in practice. Had a pretty good car, had a pretty good long run car, and it's very possible that JGR has quietly secured a good long run car for this race. The problem with Martin Truex Jr., and I've discussed that before in this podcast, is he could be fine on the long run, but similar to other veteran drivers, he's just not that great on restarts. Jeff Gordon comes to name. And when you concede 3 spots on a restart, which this is a track where you can get aggressive and you can grab spots on restarts, uh, fortune favors the bold, as the English say. Truex loses 3 spots on the long run, he gains them back, and that's also hoping that you get enough long runs. Do I think it, and he, even if he is good in the long run, so is Larson and Byron. So, hey, you started 8th, you get right back close to the top 5, but you're still 10 miles away from Kyle Larson and William Byron. And that's how it pretty much played out last year. They could use some strategy possibly to get to the front, but that magic only works for so long. If you don't have the fastest car, it's going to fade. Brad Keselowski made it work last year because he had a fast car. Hamlin and Truex last year probably had 5th to 10th place cars. And so after the magic, they kind of tailed back a little bit, and the cream rise to the top in terms of Larson and Christopher Bell running away, or William Byron and Kyle Larson in the spring race. I guess you've already lumped Ty Gibbs in that as well. I just don't see how he's going to score enough fantasy points. If he finishes 5th, that's a great day for him, but that's only a 5.5 return. I don't see really much in playing him, just starting too close to the front. It worries me that Chris Buescher and his RFK teammate, Brad Keselowski, didn't run a lot of laps in practice. They're fast-ish, fast enough, but I don't see the potential upside here. I know he's a little bit more affordable, but similar to Gibbs, if he's not leading laps, and we've seen Buescher do it before, but those are track specific. And even if they're not track specific, it's track specific for Larson and Byron. Buescher's got to beat 2 of the best at this track. I don't see that happening. Can he move forward? Yes. Can he get in the top 5? Yes. But will that be good enough for an optimal lineup? Most cases, not. You're going to get lower ownership, but there's plenty of question marks around that. And then even then, it's probably going to be a game of cards, and it's going to be a, 2-tire switch. And then even then, you're going to have to go against other guys that are going to be playing that sleeve up their, or that card up their sleeve. Bell is a perfect example of don't abandon your process. We liked Bell a lot earlier this week. Had a very fast car earlier this week. So what if he didn't qualify the best? Still was pretty good. Made it to the last round. Seems to have some decent long run speed. The best of JGR was really good here last year. Do not completely throw him out because Larson and Byron look amazing, and Bell didn't quite light up the scoreboard. He was really fast last season in this track. That wasn't very long ago. I'm not saying that he is the play over Larson and Byron, but as you get closer to lock, you're going to want to consider him at 9,500, and he even is going to provide a little bit of place differential. Even if he scrapes off, let's say, 10 fast lap points, finishes 4th, and that reminds me a lot of what Alex Bowman did last season. Alex Bowman, 13 fast laps, 8 place differential, finished 3rd behind his teammates. At 8,500, he was in the optimal lineup. It's kind of similar, not exactly similar, because those can cost a little bit more, not as quite as many place differential, but if you're thinking about the viability of the play, that archetype of a play where place differential and a little bit of fast laps here or there because the guy's fast on a long green flag run, Bell's in play. And you could probably say the same for Elliott. I would much rather take Bell at 9,800. The only issue with both of these guys is not that this play can't work. It absolutely can. They can squeeze into the top 5 and into the top 3. Their issue then is just, well, there's other drivers, as we're going to see we go further back, that are cheaper and also have similar upside and potential. Now, just in terms of finishing the day, yeah, I think they both can finish well. We like the speed here. This is the one JGR Toyota that I like. It's just there's going to be better options. McDowell, I just can't see it happening. Even if you give him a 12th place finish, that's a 4.3 return. That's only 31 fantasy points. Same thing with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. It would be a fantastic day for Stenhouse to finish 12th, but still, it just doesn't work in fantasy. These are really good practice times for Ricky Stenhouse, and he was in Group B, and it's encouraging. Maybe JTG Daugherty has something. This will be their first time they're rolling that intermediate track program out this season. But then again, we did see races last year where Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was a 10th, 15th place driver, and then we also saw plenty of races where he was a 25th place driver. You know who he is. We know what we're getting with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And on this slate, you're not going to roster him starting 13th. You're not going to roster Carson Hocever starting 14th. Overall, Spires seem to have decent speed. Some qualify better than others. It is encouraging, but the long run speed is not there. This car may have been slightly more trimmed out with a 13th, also running during the faster practice. Comes out, Hocever lays down an aggressive lap, gets a good starting position. When we get this restart to begin the race, and he might be slightly more trimmed out than he wants to be, and then he gets into dirty air, I can't see him moving forward. I can only see him sliding backwards. And I mean, even if he is somehow at the end of the day able to finish 15th, which would be a career day, basically, not necessarily, but very good day, he doesn't work. You don't need to spend much more time. He's a cross out as well. Ryan Blaney at 10,200. Group B, so he's not going to have that short run speed. Long run speed is a little bit better. And it seems like maybe they went in a little bit different of a direction than Joey Logano and Austin Cindric. I like that. The intermediate track program for Penske hasn't been great. They were consistent. That's how Blaney won the championship, but they weren't great. I am intrigued. And so you can look at some of his lap speeds for Blaney and see kind of where does he stand against the top guys. Now, the beauty of rostering Blaney with his starting position is he doesn't, again, have to lead all laps. Here it is. Pretty good speed here for Blaney. Lap 23, he's still laying down at 177. That is comparable to Kyle Larson and William Byron. And the fact that he was able to go out here and consistently run lap after lap and put up good speeds means he's pretty confident and comfortable in his car. I think he's going to be able to move around, find spots, and better than Bell or Elliott, he's going to get you a couple more place differential points for a couple more dollars. But he is definitely in that group. Suarez, I think he had too much of a fiesta, too many Modelos celebrating, hungover. I don't know. That's really a true narrative that we sometimes see. Too much partying this week. I mean, it's not just him. You're like, oh, the driver went wild. There's a whole entire team, a whole entire organization that basically loses a day. All the engineers, all the guys working in the shop, even the women in the front office taking phone calls. That's sexist. Even the men in the front office taking phone calls, the male secretaries. Is that better? Thank you. Not on it. Corey LaJoy, 6,300, another Spire car, looking pretty good, decent times. May again also be a little bit more trimmed out. Didn't run a bunch of laps. I think it's the same story. Probably has a top 20 car, but it's just not going to work in fantasy at that starting position. Tyler Reddick, inflated numbers because it was Group A, but don't completely dismiss his numbers. Like I said before, switching over, the track had changed. They weren't able to adjust for qualifying. It's still going to be a top 5 car. His teammate 2311, Bubba Wallace. I think Reddick is right there with those place differential fast lap guys that we were talking about. Should be popular with Blaney. And then Bell and Elliott, maybe a step down, but I don't really want to don't want to go get the shotgun wedding with Christopher Bell. Trust the process and the research you've done earlier this week. Pretty impressed with Austin Dillon. 29 is going to scare people, but again, that's Group B on the long run. Around a 15th place car over the years, around a 15th place car. Austin Dillon can move up just enough. Maybe he can make it work. He's right on that fringe of being a decent value play. If he can get the 12th, 5.6 FPPK, that's 16th on this slate. Probably going to scare people away because of that 29 and starting close to the front. But he is definitely a value you're going to want to look at. Ross Chastain. Big 22 here. Little worry. Super fast on the short run because of Group A. Let's look at his laps. But before we go and sip that syrup of the sweet, sweet practice laps, Chastain was one of the drivers that we liked earlier this week because he's been really good at Las Vegas. He's aggressive on restarts. He likes to lead laps. He likes to run fast laps. He can make this thing work. All right, let's sip the syrup. And look at what Chastain did. So fires off really well, and then this thing just fell off immediately. Now, that also could be because we had the break in the action. We had the wreck by Ryan Preece. The air pressures on Chastain's car changed possibly. We've got a heat cycle on those tires. That could be the reason why he was unable to put together a good long run speed. You got to watch the practices. You got to become familiar with how these things work. That is, you would have to ask the team. But to see this disparity between short run speed and long run speed, and knowing that there was that wreck and a break in the action, I have a strong reason to believe that it was a heat cycle on those tires, the air pressures were different, and he just wasn't able to collect decent data. Now, you could worry a little bit more here, but Suarez not being fast either. But, fifth, I think, is a very conservative projection. Kyle Busch, got to put him on the board. Always good at his home track in Las Vegas. The speeds were there. Again, Group B, 17-4. That makes sense. Good long run speed. His teammate Austin Dillon wasn't too far behind him. He can move forward and get place differential. Ross Chastain can move forward and get place differential. Blaney is going to cost you more, but maybe he could lead some laps. Maybe not. And so those are the reasons why it's tougher to play Bell and Elliott when we have these significant players, power players down here. Eric Jones is a no for me. He doesn't look like Legacy Motorsports knows what the hell they're doing. Not really surprised. They are switching to Toyota this year, the new Toyota build. This is their first Toyota dance at an intermediate track. And we look at their other car in John Hunter Nemechek. It struggled as well, so not interested. Here's Alex Bowman, even further back at 8,100. Enough long run speed. I can trust him. I like the play. Zane Smith, the worst qualifying of the group of the Spire team. But he clearly does not have maybe the same setup because he is in Group A, but he did not run down a fast lap. Whereas we look at Group B, Corey LaJoie, 15th on a short run. Carson Hocevar, 13th. But we look at Zane Smith, he is unable to really lay down a fast lap, but when it comes to 10 laps in Group B and 15 laps or in Group A, sure, it might be inflated a little bit, but it seems like they put a little bit more handling into Zane's truck or car. Only so used to put him in the truck series. So it doesn't get a good qualifying position. This would be a value play that I'm definitely interested in. This is the Spire car that I would go to. I've got my eyes on Zane Smith. Brad Keselowski did not qualify very well. Last fall at Las Vegas, took a two-tire strategy, but still had a fast enough car to maintain position to stay up front for the entire race. But it looked like the car wasn't that far off. Maybe the Ford new body has thrown RFK for a loop. But overall, when we look at the speed from RFK, it's not great. Now, if any team can play smoke and mirrors with two-tire strategy, it's going to be a Brad Keselowski-led team. So you can't completely eliminate him. Would love for these speeds to be a little bit better. He didn't really show us much. And he had the benefit of going out after his teammate had collected data, if I'm not mistaken. Buescher had already been out in Group A, yeah. And so Keselowski was able to listen to that information and take it in, and still was not able to produce decent lap times. That, my friends, is a concern. The long race, things will change. There's tons of place differential opportunities for him in the back, but I would love to have seen something better than this. He does not fire off well. He is running in the 177s in lap 7, whereas Kyle Larson was doing that in the 20s. And overall, this looks like we just missed it. And he may be able to recover and rebound and have a decent day, but this does not seem like it's going to be a day where he changes the slate. Josh Berry at 6,100, another cheap SHR. His speed's not as good as Gregson. His speed's not as good as Chase Briscoe, which again leads me to believe that each of these teams are trying to experiment in many different ways, throwing everything at the wall and trying to collect as much data and figure out what's going on. And it looks like to me, Childers and Berry just missed it. I mean, it is hard to say, ooh, I get a SHR car, 26 at 6,100. But we do kind of need to hit a reset on our brain. This isn't Kevin Harvick or even Clint Boyer or solid Stewart-Haas Racing drivers in solid Stewart-Haas Racing cars. It's young, inexperienced drivers with new teams, with cars that aren't great, that have also gone through a new body type. And you put that out there and say, well, maybe this isn't the deal I thought it was. You can't completely eliminate it because we know Barry's talented. Now, one thing people will probably point out occasionally, say, well, look, we know Barry is young, but this should be an easier car to drive. And that's not really the case. We know that Barry has been really successful at Las Vegas in the Xfinity Series. Well, it's got more horsepower. It's got low downforce. If he can do that, then he can do this. No, it really doesn't work that way. I mean, if anything, if drivers can adapt to anything, it's power. If drivers can adapt to anything, it's less grip. Is it better racing for us? Yes. It's exciting. The Xfinity Series is pretty cool. But when it comes to challenging a driver, while yes, it is a challenge, it's the challenge they're always facing. Drivers are always facing too much power, not enough grip. That's the story of racing. So the Xfinity idea of it being like, well, if you're good there, you're going to be good anywhere. Well, it's not really the case, because you can be good in Xfinity and terrible in truck, and same thing with Cup, because this Cup car with the diffuser and the splitter, and I mean, that definitely changes track by track. And this is a track where you really need experience knowing not to scrape the diffuser up. You really need experience knowing not to scrape up the next gen models splitter, because you have an extremely bumpy bottom groove, and we saw that on Priest. And it could have been the wind, but we've seen it in the past where, because the diffuser scrapes some of those bumps, it loses rear downforce, and all of a sudden you're flying into the wall. So although Barry has been good in the Xfinity Series in that package, I don't think you can just take that over and say, oh, it's good Las Vegas and Xfinity, he should be good here. No, it's just in many ways a different driving style. And a lot of times you're forced to run the middle, you're forced to run the top, and not necessarily, the apex, because of the where those bumps are. And you got to know when to go to the bumps, when to change lanes and grooves. That's why a guy like Kyle Larson is exceptional here. That's why a guy like Ross Chastain, who may not necessarily know the best way around, finds a way around, is able to move forward. William Byron, another very analytical driver, has had success at Las Vegas. You could see yesterday in the Xfinity race, Cole Custer willing to go up on the wall and find another lane, find another bit of speed, and ends up finishing second. He's not just a guy that can, a one-trick pony with a fast car wanting one groove all day. The race came to him a little too late, but it just shows that this is a really good racetrack where you can experiment. And it requires a lot of experimenting when it comes to this next-gen car. And that's a reason why you probably aren't that crazy about Barry. Nemechek, great day yesterday, don't have the car today. Denny Hamlin didn't show a lot of speed in practice last year, wasn't really excited about his car last fall. So this is 2 times in a row where they're not really putting the best car out there. Can he get the top 10? Yeah, probably. By the end of the day, it's a great driver, a good team. They're going to work their way forward. How much forward can he get? Well, if we put him in 8th place, that's 56 fantasy points. That's only 5.2 FPPK. That's still 10,700 that you're rolling the dice on. I would much rather take guys starting a little bit closer in terms of Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain, who have better cars and can get their way forward. You can chase Denny Hamlin all you want, and it's not really a bad idea. You got Denny Hamlin starting 28th. Why not? But I worry, last year they didn't really have the setup. And overall, it doesn't look like JGR has the setup. And if you're relying on long run speed, that can be really a problem when you're in the pack the entire time and you are dependent on some long runs. And we don't even know if he has long run speed. We are glad that he ran a lot of laps. Maybe, he was just doing the old shakedown, Denny Hamlin style, not revealing all of his cards, just trying to get a good feel of the car. He did suffer from the Group A switch, so that definitely is going to hurt with the heat cycle. So if you want to put that out there, you can see that he gets his 4 laps in. Then we got to go back out and run again. And the fall off is a little bit more intense because of that. But he stays out and keeps running laps because he just wants to collect some data. So he is clearly faster. And then, the track's going to change from Group A to Group B. And then we also have the way they set the grid. So he is faster than a 28th place car. That is for sure. But how fast is he? Is he faster than Larson and Byron? Well, he doesn't necessarily need to be. What he needs to be is faster than Ross Chastain and Kyle Busch. And I've got them a little bit ahead of him. I think maybe I'm bearing him a little too much. I'm almost talking myself into it. Because you do see that it was that situation where we cycled from the wreck that cut his speeds in. So maybe his long run speeds around 12th. So if he learns a little bit throughout the race, sure, let's put him up to, let's not go crazy. We'll give him 6th. And now that gets him 60 fantasy points. Still, I think what ultimately the conversation with him is going to be is point per dollar, does he work? If Byron and Larson have 2 really good days, he probably just doesn't end up in the optimal lineup. End of story. You go with a $9,000 place differential. You take the savings with Alex Bowman, who may not be better point per dollar, may not be even better, but because he's significantly cheaper and saves you $3,000, he's an option. All right, let's look at some of these bums in the back. Burton the Wood brothers had issues with the car. When don't they have issues? Not really encouraged whatsoever. I'm good. Gregson, I think it's a wild card. It's a dice roll. Clearly the switch from Group A to Group B, the issues that he had, maybe his little loose moment in practice spooked him a little bit, and so he's starting further back. It is his home racetrack. And in reality, all of these drivers in the back have warts. They're all going to have asterisks. Just some have more concerns than others. Some have done things and some have not. But 6200 SHR car, had speed, had to deal with some issues in practice. Gregson is definitely going to be your most popular value play. Todd Gilliland just typically is that 25th place car. Sometimes you go there when you need it. I wouldn't completely eliminate him from the board. He might slide in if you're double punting, but Gregson would be the place to go. Kaz Grala, I'm not playing a Rick Ware car. Derek Kraus, Daniel Hemrick. I had high hopes for Daniel Hemrick coming into the week. And Colleague went out there and didn't do much. Now, remember, he qualified in Group A. So the Group B switch, they didn't have it. And this is an excellent time to talk about Colleague. Colleague is known to trim out cars. We've seen this a lot in the Xfinity series. And lesson learned with Josh Williams. Very good. I retweeted this from Josh Williams. Josh Williams struggled in practice yesterday. Josh Williams struggled in qualifying yesterday. And I thought, yep, that's it. He's not getting the premium colored equipment. This is a rental because he had sponsorship. I was wrong. Josh Williams later came out and explained, these colored cars are different than other teams. They set them up differently. I was really struggling. I wanted them to make it tighter. They did not. But over the course of the race, I figured out how to drive a colored car at an intermediate track. That was it. He simply needed to adapt to the fact that Colleague loves trimming these babies out. And you can see possibly that Hemrick probably got a little bit of a trim out here. Had some speed in Group A. Track changed. Maybe it was a wind gust. Either way, he faded back. I would love to have seen him run more laps. That would have been nice. But we'll take what we can get. And if I had excitement about Hemrick and Colleague earlier this week, because Colleague has been really good at Las Vegas over the last couple seasons with AJ Allmendinger and with Justin Haley, I'm not going to completely abandon what I thought. And I'm getting him starting in the back. And we know that there have been complications between Group A and Group B. So let's look a little bit closer at Hemrick's laps and see if we can get at least something of another little bit more confidence in Hemrick. Fires off great, which screams trimmed out, and then just loses her. This is not going to help during the race, but during the race, there are ways to add downforce, to add grip with tire pressures, with the track bar. He can drive the car in different ways. He can find different lanes. They can make some subtle adjustments. They can, at the very least, make this better than a 34th place car. I like Hemrick. I don't really necessarily need to go to his teammate Kraus. You want to pivot to him. Not going to be for me. Justin Haley at 5,300. I'm not encouraged by the Rick Ware cars. Ryan Preece got into the wreck in practice. I'm assuming he is in a backup. It's $6,000, starting in the very back. We'll see what he's got. No problem. But let's look value-wise. He's definitely going to be on the board. Not much that we can talk about other than that because he got into a wreck. So I can't further analyze what he's got going on. I like Danny Hemrick. I don't think a lot of people are going to follow me to this party, and I'm glad for that. And I like Gregson. These would be my preferred value targets. I think they all are pretty solid. And if you want to get a little bit different, you can look at Zane Smith. That works as well. And up here, you want to get really sneaky, maybe throw Austin Dillon in. These guys up here are too close to the front. Thanks for joining me. We went through every driver. If you want to start breaking down lineup builds and lineup constructions, check out the website, racefortheprize.com, and you can see past optimal lineups, how many hogs. I also have a ton of videos up on YouTube already where you can look at lineup construction. You can look up the trends so that you know, like, how many lap leaders do I need, or hogs, or dominators? How much place differential am I chasing? What's the typical value play look like? It's all available in my spreadsheets. It's all available in my videos. Racefortheprize.com. Like, subscribe, share. Blessed to have you guys around. Love you guys. Triple Light's fantastic.